Have you ever found an amazing mockup online, and the moment you try to download it, the website asks you to pay for it or join their premium plan before you can access it? There's no easy workaround for this, but in this video I'm going to show you how to make your own professional looking and clean mockups from scratch. So let's get started. To start, we'll be using Photoshop to set up our design template, and a free software called Blender to model the assets for the mockup and also to render the final image. For the purpose of simplicity, we'll create a single mockup render of a plastic cup for a coffee brand. Using the techniques we are about to learn, you can apply it to any idea for a mockup that you can think of and quickly get some really clean results. Okay, so we're going to go over this process in 3 simple steps. Step 1. Modeling. This is where we create the geometry of our model. With a new scene in Blender open, hit Shift A on your keyboard and select a cylinder object. From the dialog box at the bottom left, you can set the number of vertices you want the cylinder to contain. I'll be going with 80. From here, we can switch into edit mode to further customize the shape of our model. In a nutshell, I'm using basic functions like inset, extrude, bevel, and scale to create the basic structure of the cup. For the lid of the cup, we can use a squashed version of the same cylinder object and now just add a few details simply by extruding and scaling this upper ring of vertices. And finally, I'll add a small hole on the top of the lid for the liquid to pour through. It's small details like this that maximize the realism of your mockup, so keep that in mind. Once our model is created, we have to prepare it for texturing, and this brings us to step 2, texture setup. In 3D, using an image as the material for an object is very simple. But first, we have to define where this texture is going to be and how it will be mapped on our model. We can achieve this through something called UV unwrapping. So let's take a few seconds to understand what UV unwrapping is all about. If I have a 3D model and I want a texture to be displayed on it, I need a way to tell the program exactly where I want each pixel of the image to be placed on the 3D model. To do this, I use a UV unwrapping algorithm to interpret the 3D geometry and spit out a 2D mapping of the object. Now, we can use any image to influence the look of our model. Let's go ahead and create the UV map for our coffee cup. Currently, you can see how messed up the texture looks. So, start by selecting the top and bottom rings of edges. Then hit U and select Mark Seam. This marks the edge loop as the seam that will form the borders of our UV map. Also select the back edge of the cup and do the same thing. Now, just select the middle section of the cup and hit U again. This time click on Unwrap. If we take a look at our texture in Material Preview, we can see that it's looking much better, but we have some distortions on the back. To the left of our viewport is the interface for our UV map, so let's do some edits to fix the problem. To do this, we need to make sure all the edges on the UV map are parallel to each other. So, start by straightening out the curved loops, then adjust the rotation, scale, and position of the UVs. And finally, scale each horizontal loop of edges, such that the vertical edges are lined up in a parallel fashion like this. Now our UVs are perfect. If you've been enjoying this video so far, I'd appreciate if you dropped a like or subscribe if you'd like to see more videos like this one. Okay, to proceed, I'm just going to quickly create a simple design in Illustrator and paste it in Photoshop so we can use it as the image texture for our model. Usually I like to create a new layer, fill it with black, and then add a noise pattern to it and change the blending mode to lighten. This gives the darker parts of our design a very uneven consistency, which I really like. After that, I'll just save the Photoshop file to a new folder, and back in Blender, I'm going to navigate to that folder and choose the PSD as the image texture for the 3D cup. And now we have our fully textured cup. Of course, don't forget to texture the lid as well. Step 3. Composition, lighting, and rendering. With this step comes the fun part. This is where we get to play with light setups and camera angles until we get our final render. Now, we can begin to find the different ways to position our object in 3D space. This is how we establish composition. From here, we can start placing different light sources or maybe adding a backdrop. To create a seamless backdrop, add a plane and then extrude one of the edges on the Z-axis. Then select the corner edge and bevel it with the Ctrl+B shortcut. Give it a couple more segments and then set the shading to smooth. Now, let's focus on creating a clean professional light setup. First, just go ahead and start by changing the color of the backdrop to something darker. This way we can create some contrast when we place our lights into the scene. Then, point your light source towards the subject and increase the power to something a little stronger. Anything above 1000 watts should do. Now, increase the radius and push the light behind the subject. Then, add a new area light and move it closer to the front. Then, rotate it like this. And now gradually increase the power till it looks good to you. In the shader editor, change the interface from object to world. Here, I already have a preliminary world texture set up, so all I'm going to do is increase the strength and change the HDRI image to something soft. Now let's parent the lid to the cup so that they both move together. Hit Ctrl+P on your keyboard and select object. And now we can rotate, move and transform our model however we like. Okay, so the overall lighting is pretty fine, but I want to create an extra highlight on the rim of the cup, and I don't want the light to affect the backdrop the way you see here. With Blender 4.2, we now have access to a fantastic functionality that we can do with the lights in our scene. It's called light linking. With this feature, I can restrict the influence of a light to only affect certain objects. This can really enhance the visual appeal of our mockup. It is as easy as creating a linking collection and simply dragging the objects we want to be affected into the collection, which is just everything except the backdrop. Now, just hit F12 on your keyboard to render the final image. I encourage you to not only end here, but try out different environment setups for your mockup. Here's a more cinematic composition I did with the model we created. One extra amazing thing about creating 3D mockups this way is the fact that not only are they versatile, but you can easily animate them to get some amazing results that will really make your design skills shine. And here are a few other mockups I made using this very same 3-step process. Even though it takes a while to set up, this process of creating your own mockups is really flexible and gives you a lot of creative freedom with the designs you make. Okay guys, this brings us to the end of the video. Thanks for watching and keep designing.